There are days, aren't there, when life feels like a still clear pond reflecting a tranquil sky. You glide along, unburdened, at peace. But then, without warning, the winds rise. Dark clouds gather on the horizon. The once calm waters begin to churn, and before you know it, a fierce storm is upon you. Every life, no matter how blessed, will face such squalls. Unexpected events, uncontrollable circumstances, the currents of fate that threaten to pull you under and leave you adrift. Have you ever found yourself feeling like that small boat, tossed relentlessly on a raging sea, desperately trying to fight every monstrous wave, yet utterly powerless to control the wind's direction or the ocean's unforgiving current? You're weary, aren't you, of agonizing over things you simply cannot change? The unkind words of others, the unpredictable twists of destiny, the relentless cascade of worries about what tomorrow might bring. That powerful image on the thumbnail, the one that whispers of inner calm amidst outer chaos, speaks directly to that yearning, doesn't it? It promises a steadfastness of spirit, unshaken by what lies beyond your grasp. Is that the peace you seek? Is that the dream of a soul unyielding to the world's external tremors? Today, we won't speak of avoiding storms, for storms are an undeniable, inevitable part of the human journey. Instead, we'll journey into a story, not of fantastical magic, but of a profound, real-world magic that resides within each and every one of us, the magic of acceptance and the quiet, unwavering strength of the inner self. A strength that allows us to stand firm as a mighty oak, even as the fiercest winds howl around us. This isn't merely information. It's an invitation to explore an ancient secret, a timeless wisdom that has guided countless souls through their darkest hours, transforming fear into fortitude and chaos into a deep, abiding serenity. Imagine for a moment, what if you could weather any emotional tempest, not by fighting against the waves, but by becoming one with an unshakable core? What if the very things that once threw you into despair became opportunities to reveal your deepest resilience? This isn't about ignoring pain or pretending that difficulties don't exist. It's about a radical shift in perspective, a powerful reorientation of your inner compass, so that no matter how wild the seas become, your true north remains clear and steady. The Stoics, those ancient masters of self-mastery, understood this profound truth. They taught us that while we cannot control the world around us, we hold absolute dominion over our own minds, our judgments, and our responses. This is where true power lies, not in external victory, but in internal fortitude. Join us as we delve into a tale that, much like the timeless fables of old, holds a profound truth at its heart. A truth whispered through generations, now ready to awaken the dormant strength within you. Prepare to discover how to find your own calm in the storm and embrace what you cannot control, not with resignation, but with profound, liberating understanding. Your journey towards unshakable inner peace begins now. Part 1. The Weaver's Sorrow. And so our tale begins, not in the grand halls of kings, nor amidst the bustling marketplaces of a mighty city, but in a quiet, unassuming village, cradled by gentle hills and bisected by a winding river that whispered secrets as it flowed. In this picturesque place lived a man named Silas, a cobbler by trade, whose hands were renowned throughout the district for their exquisite skill. His stitches were so fine, his leather work so precise, that even the toughest boots felt like soft slippers, and the most delicate shoes became works of art. Yet despite his mastery and the admiration of his neighbors, Silas's heart often felt as though it were a fragile, tightly wound spring, ready to snap at the slightest provocation. It was a heart that wrestled endlessly with the world's crookedness, a spirit easily bruised by the harsh realities that constantly presented themselves. Silas saw the cunning merchant at the market shortchange a trusting widow, his smile betraying a deceptive glint in his eye. He heard the venomous whispers of neighbors tearing down a good name with words sharper than any cobbler's awl. He witnessed with a heavy heart the strong arm of the powerful crush the weak, leaving behind trails of injustice and despair. Each unfairness, each unkind word, each glimpse of human folly felt like a sharp splinter embedding itself deep within his soul, making his days feel heavy, his breath shallow, and his nights haunted by restless worry. He carried these burdens as though they were his own, believing, truly believing, that the world's imperfections were somehow his personal responsibility, a weight he must bear. You see, Silas's joy, a fragile and fleeting thing, was entirely dependent on the external world. When the sun shone brightly on his small cottage, casting warm rays upon his well-worn workbench, and his tools gleamed under the morning light, a delicate happiness would bloom within him. He cherished the quiet rhythm of his craft, the scent of fresh leather, the satisfying thud of his hammer against the sole. He loved his small patch of garden, where he grew humble herbs, and the comfort of his simple home, adorned with the few, carefully crafted possessions he owned. Yet this very attachment, this deep affection for the tangible and the predictable, became a source of constant torment. For no sooner would a beautiful, cloudless day unfold than dark clouds would gather on the horizon, threatening a sudden downpour that could ruin his carefully prepared hides drying outside. He would spend anxious moments rushing to gather them, his heart pounding, his breath catching in his throat. A tiny mouse, seeking shelter from the cold, might gnaw through a precious spool of thread, unraveling hours of careful work. Or, worse still, a less scrupulous traveler passing through the village might eye his finest leather, vanishing into the night with what was rightfully his, leaving behind only an empty space and a gaping hole in Silas's meager earnings. Each such incident, each unwelcome intrusion of chaos into his meticulously ordered world, would send him spiraling into a pit of despair. He lived in a perpetual state of vigilance, an unspoken, tiring battle against unseen misfortunes. He would spend hours meticulously arranging his tools, not just for efficiency, but as if their perfect alignment could ward off ill luck. He would check his stores repeatedly, his brow furrowed, peering anxiously at the sky for any hint of a change in weather. He believed, deep down in the core of his being, that if he could just manage every minute detail, protect every fragile piece of his life from every conceivable external threat, then and only then would he truly find peace. But alas, the world, in its vast and indifferent nature, rarely bends to the anxious will of one man. And so, Silas found himself endlessly battling shadows he could not grasp, his hands clenched in futile frustration, his spirit a constant echo of the unpredictable storms raging outside his small, vulnerable world. He was, in essence, a prisoner of circumstance, his inner calm held hostage by the whims of fate, always reacting, never truly at rest. He longed for stillness, but found only the relentless churn of worry, a constant undertow pulling him further from the shores of tranquility. Part 2. The Whispers of the Old Sage. Silas, with his spirit perpetually ensnared by the chaotic dance of external events, continued his weary existence, much like a trapped bird beating its wings against invisible bars. Each morning brought with it a fresh wave of anxieties, each evening a new inventory of worries. He yearned for release, for a way to break free from this ceaseless cycle of hope and despair, but found no path, no guidance. His meticulous efforts to control the uncontrollable only tightened the knots of frustration within him, leaving him exhausted and bewildered. But as fate often weaves its most profound lessons into the fabric of ordinary days, a figure unlike any Silas had ever seen hobbled into his humble shop one crisp autumn morning. The air, which had been still and heavy with Silas's unspoken burdens, seemed to shimmer around her. She was an old woman, her face a living map of time, etched with countless wrinkles that told tales of seasons long past. Her back, bowed with the weight of years, seemed to carry not just her own age, but perhaps the accumulated wisdom of generations. Yet her eyes, ancient and clear as polished river stones, held a piercing quality, a serene depth that seemed to see beyond the worn boots and scattered tools, directly into the anxious core of Silas's being. She stood there silently for a long moment, her gaze fixed not on Silas's nimble fingers as they deftly mended a boot, but on the deep furrows of worry etched upon his brow. Her presence, though quiet, was profound, like a deep well of stillness in a bustling world. Silas, sensing a presence both humble and profound, looked up from his work. He felt a peculiar sense of unease, yet also an inexplicable draw to her silent observation. Then her voice, a gentle rustle of dry leaves in a soft breeze, yet carrying an unexpected strength, broke the silence. "Young man," she croaked, the sound seeming to resonate not just in the air, but within Silas himself. "Your hands, I observe, are skilled in mending shoes with diligence and true craft. But tell me, what mends your own spirit, which appears as worn and weary as an old traveler's boot, constantly journeying through hardship?" Silas, startled by her directness, yet feeling an odd sense of relief at having his unspoken torment acknowledged, sighed deeply. He laid down his hammer, the sudden quiet of the moment amplifying his inner turmoil. "Good woman," he began, his voice tinged with a weariness that went beyond mere physical fatigue. "The world, as you must surely know, is a tangled knot of twists and turns, rife with unfairness and ill will. There is deceit in the marketplace, envy among neighbors, and constant threat from the whims of nature. My heart aches to witness it all, to feel the sting of injustice and the bite of misfortune. And I confess I find no lasting peace, no true respite from these endless worries. How can one find calm when the very ground beneath one's feet seems to shift with every passing moment?" The old woman listened patiently, her ancient eyes never leaving his face. When he finished, she nodded slowly, a knowing glint dancing in their depths, as if she had heard this lament countless times before, echoing through the ages. "Indeed," she replied, her voice growing subtly stronger, imbued with a quiet authority. "The path of the world is often crooked, my dear cobbler, and the stones upon it are sharp, often placed there to bruise and wound the unwary traveler. It is a path full of unexpected turns, sudden chasms, and lurking dangers. But tell me, I implore you, do you, with all your remarkable skill, mend the path itself? Do you straighten its bends, or smooth every sharp stone that lies in its way? Can you command the sun to shine always, or forbid the thief from ever lurking in the shadows?" Silas blinked, the simplicity of her question cutting through the tangled web of his anxious thoughts. He looked from his hands, accustomed to shaping leather, to the rough, uneven floor of his shop, and then beyond, to the dusty, unpredictable road that led away from his village. "Why, no, good woman," he said, shaking his head. "I mend the shoes, of course. The path, with all its cracks and imperfections, with all its unpredictable turns and hazards, is far beyond my mending. It is simply there, as it has always been, and always will be." "Precisely," she replied, a faint, almost imperceptible smile gracing her lips, a smile of profound understanding. "And so it is with the fragile vessel of your spirit, young man. The words and deeds of others, the cruel turns of fortune, the unpredictable whims of nature, These are but the crooked path upon which you must walk. They are external, beyond your domain, beyond your control, like the wind that blows where it wills, or the river that flows to the sea. You cannot straighten its bends, nor can you smooth every sharp stone that lies in your way. You cannot command others to be kind, or demand that fortune always favor you. These are not yours to command. She then reached into her simple homespun pouch, worn soft with age, and drew out a small, smooth river stone, perfectly oval, polished by the ceaseless flow of the water. She placed it gently on his workbench beside his gleaming tools, a stark contrast of nature's simple perfection against man's intricate craft. "This stone," she whispered, her voice a soft, resonant hum, "cannot choose where the river carries it. It cannot decide if it will be tumbled in a furious current or rest in a still eddy. It cannot control the force of the water, nor the course of the stream, but it can choose to remain hard, unchanging in its essence, even as the water rushes over it, even as it is tossed and turned. It maintains its form, its inherent nature. It is not disturbed by the river's journey. And so it is with you," she continued, her gaze unwavering, reaching into the deepest parts of Silas's soul. "Your own mind, your own choices, your own reactions, these, young man, are the very shoes you wear on your journey through life. And these, unlike the path, you can indeed mend. You can strengthen them, make them sturdy, resilient, and impervious. You can choose how you meet the world, how you internalize its chaos, how you respond to its sharp stones. For in mending these shoes, your inner self, you make yourself able to tread upon any path, no matter how treacherous, without your spirit being pierced or your soul being bruised. The power is not in changing the world, but in transforming your gaze upon it and solidifying the ground beneath your own feet, which is your mind." With these profound, echoing words, the old woman turned, her ancient frame surprisingly swift, and hobbled out of the shop, disappearing as quietly and swiftly as a shadow at dusk, leaving Silas alone with his tools, the scent of leather, and the smooth, silent river stone. Part 3. The Unbreakable Thread. The old woman's words, like a handful of precious seeds scattered upon fertile ground, began to take root deep within Silas's troubled heart. For days following her mysterious departure, the image of the smooth, unyielding river stone lay on his workbench, a silent, humble reminder of her profound wisdom. He would pick it up, turning it over in his calloused hands, feeling its cool, unwavering surface. Its very stillness seemed to whisper a truth that had always eluded him, that while the river might rage and the current might pull, the stone remained, steadfast in its own nature. He began to ponder her riddle, allowing the simple wisdom to slowly unravel the tangled knots of his anxious thoughts. He had spent his entire life, it seemed, trying to control the uncontrollable, the unpredictable river of fate, the capricious winds of public opinion, the destructive whims of nature, and the unpredictable hearts of other people. And in doing so, he had become a prisoner of these external forces, his inner peace held hostage by every fleeting change, every perceived threat. His constant striving to mend the path had left him weary, frustrated, and perpetually on edge. But now, a new dawn of understanding began to break. Silas looked at his tools, glinting in the morning light, and then at his own rough, honest hands. He realized with a sudden profound clarity that resonated deep within his soul that though a sudden storm might indeed drench his precious leather and hungry rats might gnaw at his finest thread, there were fundamental aspects of his being, of his craft, that no storm could wash away, no creature could consume, and no thief, however cunning, could ever steal. His skill as a cobbler, honed through years of dedicated practice, was his own. His meticulous attention to detail, the patience he poured into every stitch, his unwavering dedication to quality, and his deep, abiding love for his craft. These were internal virtues. They resided within him, an unbreakable thread woven into the very fabric of his character. No external misfortune could diminish them, for they were not given by the world and thus could not be taken away by it. This realization was like a fresh, clear spring bubbling up in his soul, quenching a thirst for control he hadn't even known he possessed. He understood now that while the external world was indeed a constant whirlwind of uncertainty, a chaotic dance of events beyond his personal command, his internal world, his character, his judgments, his choices, his very essence, could be a fortress, impenetrable and calm. It was a revelation so simple yet so liberating that it caused a profound shift within him. Silas resolved then and there to fundamentally shift his focus. He no longer spent restless nights fretting about what disasters might strike outside his shop or what unkind words might be whispered about him. Instead, he consciously, deliberately channeled that boundless, wasted energy into perfecting his own inner domain. He began to learn more, to refine his methods, to develop new techniques not just for better boots, but for a better self. He meticulously researched how to treat his leather to withstand moisture more effectively, devising clever, innovative ways to deter pests from his workshop, and even experimenting with new, more durable stitching methods that would make his creations even more resilient. His new pursuits were not born of fear, but of a quiet, growing strength. He began to spend less time worrying about the future's unpredictable turns and more time honing his present actions, his present focus, his present choices. He learned to accept that risks were an inherent, inescapable part of life, much like the shadows that cling to the light or the unpredictable currents in the river. And in this newfound acceptance, he found a deeper kind of freedom. His true peace, he now understood, lay not in eliminating these external challenges, which was an impossible task, but in strengthening himself against their inevitable arrival. It was a subtle shift at first, almost imperceptible to those around him, yet its impact on Silas was profound. It was like a deep root taking hold in the earth, anchoring him firmly against the fiercest gales. His actions became more deliberate, his movements more calm. He no longer rushed through his days, his breath caught in his throat, but moved with a quiet, confident purpose. The worry that had once plagued his brow began to soften, replaced by a thoughtful serenity. He was no longer a puppet of external events, but a craftsman of his own character, meticulously weaving the unbreakable thread of inner peace, one conscious choice, one rational thought, one deliberate action at a time. This was the beginning of his true mastery, not over the world, but over himself. Part 4. The storm's true nature. Silas had begun his quiet transformation, diligently weaving the unbreakable thread of his inner peace, not just into his craft, but into the very fabric of his being. He had learned to observe the world's follies with a newfound detachment, to guard his precious inner realm from the intrusions of external chaos. Yet, like all profound lessons, this wisdom needed to be tested, forged in the crucible of adversity. For true strength is not merely thought, but proven in action, under the most trying of circumstances. And so, as fate would have it, a trial soon arrived, a true crucible for Silas's newfound wisdom. One crisp autumn evening, a great and terrible storm, unlike any the villagers had seen in generations, descended upon the valley. The sky, once a gentle blue, turned a bruised, angry purple, then swiftly black. The winds howled like hungry wolves, tearing at rooftops with unseen claws, and the rain fell in relentless sheets, turning the winding river into a raging, churning torrent, its banks overflowing with frightening speed. Panic, a cold, insidious dread, gripped the village as homes were battered, ancient trees uprooted, and precious stores of food and goods ruined by the deluge. The air filled with the terrified cries of children and the desperate shouts of adults trying to secure their belongings against nature's fury. Silas's small cottage, though sturdy, bore the brunt of the tempest. He watched from his doorway, a strange quietness within him, as torrents of water streamed through cracks he had never noticed, pooling on his floor. His workbench, usually a sanctuary of order, became a testament to the storm's wrath. And there, amidst the chaos, lay his finest, most beautiful piece of leather, a masterwork of preparation destined for a noble's prized boots. It was utterly soaked, heavy with water, its supple surface marred and discolored, seemingly ruined beyond repair. In that moment, a flicker of the old Silas, the anxious, easily despairing man, threatened to re-emerge. A wave of familiar dread washed over him, a cold hand squeezing his heart. In days past, such a sight would have driven Silas to profound despair, to wailing and tearing at his hair, cursing the heavens for their cruelty. He would have felt utterly helpless, a victim of uncontrollable forces, and the feeling would have consumed him, leaving him paralyzed by grief and anger. But now, as he gazed at the damaged hide, his breath hitched, yet his mind, surprisingly, remained clear. He remembered the old sage's words, her steady gaze, and the image of the smooth, unyielding river stone on his workbench. He felt the familiar knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach, yes, but he did not succumb to it. He recognized that the storm, the rain, the damage to his property, these were external events entirely outside his sphere of influence. They were the path, crooked and unavoidable. His reaction to them, however, his internal response, was entirely within his control. It was the shoe he wore. He took a deep, steadying breath, allowing the raw emotion to pass through him, acknowledging its presence but refusing to let it take root and fester. He did not waste a single precious moment in fruitless lament or bitter self-pity. Instead, with a calm determination that surprised even himself, a quiet strength that felt almost foreign, he set to work. He carefully carried the precious leather to a drier spot in his cottage, where the roof, miraculously, held strong. With methodical movements, he began gently patting away the excess water with clean cloths, remembering an old folk remedy for drying leather slowly, meticulously, to prevent cracking and further damage. He worked through the long, tumultuous night, not with the frenzied desperation of a man fighting for survival, but with the quiet, focused precision of a craftsman entirely dedicated to his art. His mind, usually so easily distracted by worries, now felt remarkably clear, unclouded by anger or resentment towards the storm. He wasn't fighting against the force of nature. He was working with its aftermath, turning a seeming disaster into a challenge for his skill, an opportunity to apply his wisdom. He discovered that the very concentration required for the task pushed out all thoughts of what was lost, focusing his energy entirely on what could still be saved, what could still be done. And it was in this very act of deliberate, rational response, in this quiet, purposeful effort, that he discovered a wellspring of resilience and an inventive spirit he never knew he possessed. He realized that the storm was not just an external event, it was also an internal test, and he was passing it, not with ease, but with unwavering resolve. The obstacle, indeed, had become the profound and powerful way to his own inner strengthening. Part 5. The Unmoved Heart. The great storm had passed, leaving behind a scarred landscape, but more importantly, a deeply changed Silas. He had faced the chaos, not with the futile flailing of old, but with a quiet, purposeful resilience. Day by day, month by month, As Silas continued to practice the quiet wisdom he had learned from the old sage, something truly remarkable began to unfold within him. The old anxieties, the nagging worries that once clung to him like burrs, the sharp pangs of frustration that had perpetually tightened his chest, all began to recede, much like floodwaters after a long cleansing drought. They did not vanish entirely, for life, in its very nature, is a continuous series of trials, but their power over him waned, their grip loosened. He still encountered hardships, as all mortals must. A customer, perhaps burdened by their own unseen troubles, might complain unfairly about a pair of boots, despite Silas's impeccable craftsmanship. A crucial shipment of fine leather might be delayed by weeks due to a distant road closure, threatening his livelihood, or a vital piece of equipment, a beloved hammer or a sturdy cutting board, might unexpectedly break, forcing him to improvise. Yet these external events, these unavoidable ripples in the pond of life, no longer held the power to sway his inner peace. They were merely facts of existence, not personal affronts. He now understood, with a profound and liberating clarity, that true happiness, true tranquility, was not to be found in a world entirely free of problems, for such a world exists only in dreams. Instead, it resided within a mind that remained steadfast, unburdened by the tumult of things beyond its direct influence. His joy, therefore, was no longer a fragile bloom, tethered precariously to the perfection of every stitch or the flawless condition of every piece of leather. It was a wellspring within him, drawing from the deep reservoir of his own virtue and rational choices. He had truly internalized the lesson of the river stone. The world might rage, but his core remained unmoved. He accepted with a deep sense of calm liberation that there were indeed countless things beyond his ability to control, just as one cannot command the tides or alter the path of the stars. And with this acceptance, he consciously, consistently chose to exert his will only over the one thing he always could: his own response to these external events. His internal landscape, once a battleground of warring emotions, transformed into a disciplined garden tended by the unwavering hand of reason. The sting of injustice, when it arose, no longer ignited a furious blaze within him. Instead, it became a moment for quiet reflection on his own virtue, a reminder to act with integrity regardless of others' failings. The pang of loss, whether of a possession or an opportunity, was met not with despair, but with a clear-eyed assessment of what remained and what could still be built or created. The fear of an uncertain future, which had once paralyzed him, now morphed into a quiet resolve to focus on the present moment, on the work at hand, on the small, deliberate actions that truly mattered. He understood that yesterday was gone and tomorrow was but a promise, but today, this very moment, was his to shape. His emotions, which had once been like wild horses pulling him in every direction, now became disciplined steeds, serving his reason, not commanding it. He felt them, acknowledged them, but he did not allow them to dictate his actions or his peace. He was no longer a mere victim of circumstance, tossed about by every gust of external wind. He had become, through conscious effort and persistent practice, a true master of his own inner domain, a craftsman not just of leather, but of his very soul. His serenity was not an absence of feeling, but a wise governance of it. He had found his calm in the storm, not by making the storm disappear, but by becoming unshakable within it. Part 6. The Village's Lesson. As Silas continued his unwavering practice, anchoring himself ever more deeply in the quiet wisdom he had learned, the profound change within him did not remain confined to the four walls of his small workshop. The village, a close-knit community where lives intertwined like the threads of a tapestry, slowly, almost imperceptibly, began to notice. Silas, once known as a skilled cobbler, yes, but also as a man often weighed down by worry, his brow perpetually furrowed with anxiety, now moved with a new, quiet dignity, an unshakable presence that drew curiosity and, eventually, a subtle sense of awe. His neighbors, accustomed to his fretful sighs and anxious glances at the sky, began to observe his newfound calm with a mixture of bewilderment and wonder. It was as if the storm had passed over him, but left him not broken, but transformed, polished like the river stone. When news of a poor harvest spread through the valley, bringing with it widespread lamentations and despair among the farmers, Silas would simply nod, his gaze clear and steady. He offered no grand pronouncements, no empty platitudes of false comfort. Instead, he would quietly set about mending his tools or helping a neighbor reinforce their own battered roof, his actions speaking volumes where words might fail. His hands, though still busy with his craft, now seemed to carry a different kind of strength, one rooted not in physical might, but in an inner stillness. His unique demeanor became most evident in the face of the village's daily trials. When the usual tide of gossip, a common affliction in any small community, swept through the marketplace, tearing at reputations and sowing seeds of discord, Silas remained utterly unruffled. While others gathered to whisper and condemn, his gaze remained clear, his attention fixed on his craft, or on the genuine needs of those around him. The venomous words, once so capable of piercing his sensitive spirit, now seemed to simply glance off him like raindrops hitting a smooth, impenetrable stone. He understood that the judgments and opinions of others were not his to control, and therefore not his to internalize. His peace was no longer at the mercy of their tongues. When misfortune befell him, as it still did from time to time, a promised payment delayed indefinitely, a valuable tool lost, or even a sudden illness that confined him to his bed, he would neither curse the heavens nor wallow in self-pity as he once had. Instead, with a calm, rational mind, he would assess the situation, identify what little could be done, and then do it, without fuss or fanfare. There was no theatrical despair, no desperate clinging to what was lost, only quiet acceptance and focused action. He found solutions where others saw only insurmountable problems, not because he was luckier, but because his mind remained clear, unclouded by the emotional fog of frustration. His quiet resilience, his steadfastness in the face of life's inevitable slings and arrows, became a living testament to the power of his internal philosophy. It was a silent sermon, preached not from a pulpit, but from a cobbler's bench. People, seeing his unshakable demeanor, his profound inner peace, began to wonder. They watched how he seemed to find calm, even amidst turmoil, how he moved with purpose and equanimity, while others drifted in fear and anger. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, his example began to ripple outwards, like a stone dropped into the still waters of a pond. Some, initially skeptical, started to question their own volatile reactions. They began to ponder if their own worries, their own angers, were truly necessary. They saw Silas and thought, perhaps there is another way to live. Perhaps I too can learn to stand firm, even when the ground beneath me trembles. And so, quietly, cautiously, some began to seek the same quiet strength that radiated from the once troubled cobbler. The wisdom of the old sage, once a private whisper to Silas, now began to gently ripple outward, offering a beacon of hope and a path to inner freedom in a world often tossed about by the unceasing, unpredictable tides of fortune. Silas, the simple cobbler, had become an accidental teacher, his life a living embodiment of peace in the heart of the storm. And so, the story of Silas, the humble cobbler who learned to find his calm in the storm, draws to its close. But his journey and the ancient wisdom that guided him is not merely a tale of a distant time or a far-off land. It is a profound, timeless truth whispered across generations, now reaching out to you. It is a powerful reminder that in this unpredictable journey we call life, there will always be storms that we cannot prevent, currents we cannot command, and winds we cannot quiet. But here lies the liberating secret, the core of Stoic wisdom. What you always can control is the boat of your own inner being. The thoughts you choose to entertain, the judgments you form, the emotions you allow to take root, and the actions you decide to take. Just as Silas learned to focus on his skill and his resilience rather than lamenting over the damaged leather, we too can find profound peace and unshakable strength when we embrace the immutable truth that some things are simply beyond our control, and then, with unwavering resolve, turn our full attention to mastering what truly lies within our dominion. Imagine a life where the external chaos no longer dictates your internal state. Imagine walking through your days with a quiet confidence, knowing that no matter what winds blow, your spirit remains tethered to a deep, unshakable calm. This is not a dream. It is a possibility, illuminated by the timeless lamp of Stoicism. It is a path available to all who choose to walk it. Do you yearn to stand firm like a mountain amidst the tempests of life? Are you ready to shed the burdensome weight of worrying about things you cannot change and discover the profound freedom that comes from true self-mastery? Then let the enduring philosophy of Stoicism be your steadfast guide. It offers not quick fixes, but profound, lasting transformations, equipping you with the tools to navigate life's inevitable challenges with grace, wisdom, and an inner serenity that no external force can disturb. To delve deeper into how to apply this ancient philosophy to modern life and unlock your own wellspring of inner peace, to learn to truly find your calm in the storm, we invite you to join our growing community. Visit and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Stoic Philosophy. There, you will find a wealth of timeless wisdom, practical exercises, and inspiring discussions designed to help you cultivate resilience, clarity, and genuine contentment in your everyday life. Don't just watch. Become part of a journey that will empower you to live with purpose, peace, and unshakable strength. Your path to inner freedom begins now.